Hi everybody. It was my watering day again, and I'm glad to have you here for I just finished watering. And what I've done is I've left the ones that are in flower right now out for you to see. And there's a few in spike that I think they're here. There's a few in spike. And a couple other things I want to share with you about them all. So thanks for joining me, and if you're new to this orchid channel, I'm glad to have you. We all share comments, and if you want to read through the comments and ask somebody else a question, we're all learning and sharing, and this is all this channel is about. So anyway, this morning I was just finished breakfast and I was having my coffee, and I was thinking, everybody always says, why do you grow orchids? Are you addicted? And I just thought for a few minutes, and I wrote a few words down. And I'm not a poet, and it's not really a poem, but it's very small. So this might say why I think orchids are important in our lives. So the orchid garden is our escape from the pressures and stress of life. Where is the garden? At your window? On your counter? In your shower? Close to you in your home. You create it, and cares of the world slip by, and you breathe happier. Everything improves, and life shines brighter on darker days. As you smile more every time you look at your garden, you know in your heart you found the secret. Garden, your orchid garden. There we go. That's my reason. And yes, it does brighten the days, because it's a long winter. And when do they bloom for us in the Northern Hemisphere? They bloom approximately in January, some sooner, some a little later. And the darker days, people are getting cabin fever, and they're sad, and you're in your kitchen and you hate to leave because they're on your windowsill. And it's nice, and yes, it makes you smile. So I brought mine here, and I thought I'll put them all here. And this is just a simple, basic care of how to get to this stage. Maybe not with so many, but with as many as you want, because even one can bring happiness. But they're like potato chips, that's the problem. Okay, the basic plant care, if you're new to growing orchids, or you've discovered this and you like sharing it with other people. Now, the basic, as with all things, is patience, love, and basic needs. So I put patience first, because sometimes what happens is you come home with your new orchid. Now, if you watch this channel, you right away go soak your bark for 3 days in a plastic bag or a bucket. And then in 3 days you repot it. And I also, when I get my orchid home, I right away, while the bark is soaking, and I loosen it up a bit, because here, the only ones we get at the store, they come in moss, and they're packed. We all know that. And they look like they're living because they're so beautiful. But down underneath is the most important part to saving your orchid for year after year after year. Yes, you may pay more for it, but it'll reward you for many years to come. So that's what we do. And the media, I really truly think is not that important. Now, beginning people, I think moss can be very difficult. There are some people that manage it, but generally speaking, overwatering and too moist conditions in the pot is what kills most orchids. So I use just bark. I add some calcium from old brick mortar. I break it up. Basically, that's all I use. When I first started, I used the bought orchid potting mixes and started to find it was too, I had to sift out all the big pieces and all the little pieces went down because your plant needs air circulation. You do not want compaction around those roots. They're air roots. The only reason we're putting them in the pot is so that we can put them on our windowsill, so that we have a spot to care for them, because we can't grow them outside all year in this area. We need a pot. We need a way to get them from point A to point B, and this is why they're in the pot. So you don't want to use a compact media. Now, if I could get corks from wine bottles real cheap, I think they'd be great. They're getting their nutrition and their food from the sun. So, and the light you give them, and fertilizer too, yes, but not necessarily from the medium. There is micronutrients and things in some of the media as it breaks down, and things that do help, but I really don't think it's a necessary thing. If I could get lava rock, I think lava rock is great. All these things because the more easily what you're using for your media deteriorates, the more often you have to repot it. And sometimes if the roots are all sticking to the pot and different things, then it does stress them out. But once you get to the point where, okay, you've made the switch from moss to bark. Now, most important to remember, the roots, they are growing in moss when you get them, if that's the media that's in there. Now, every time you change media, you have to grow new roots to suit that media. Now, sometimes, and that's why I always say look for a plant that has aerial roots. Or sometimes, some of the roots that are near the surface, they're a little greener, a little hardier, because they've been getting more air. You can wrap them on the surface and just put a sprinkle bark over them, and you can probably save them. But the ones that are compacted in there, they may or may not look good to you at the time, but they're probably going to lose those ones. That's why you want to go into that pot after you've repotted it. You've cleaned it up, of course, but then you want to clean it up again maybe 4 months down the road, whatever you think. So, and just make sure none of the roots are rotting. And that first time, if you've just got your orchid, you do want to check. I water once a week. I find that's fine. In the summer, it's twice a week. Now, if you water too much, before you water your next watering day until you get a schedule that suits you, then I would check way down in the media, dig down halfway. If everything feels bone dry, okay, it's good to water. But if things are damp down there, then don't water. So it's a kind of look and see approach, and this is kind of a quick rundown of those things. But light especially now, and if you are thinking of getting a new orchid, we're getting into the time when you should run out and do it. Why? Because the growing season is coming. The days are getting longer, the days are getting brighter, they're getting warmer, and that's when they're sending out new roots and leaves. And that's when, if you've bought a new one and you've changed it from moss to bark, that's when, yes, you'll lose your older roots that are in moss. And maybe not all of them, but you will lose some because you've changed the media. It doesn't matter if you're going from bark to moss to, it doesn't matter what change you're giving that plant. If you're putting it in something different, it will take a shock and it will go roots to suit the new medium. Now, the more arid your media is, say bark, mine is quite dry, most of the time, then you're growing a hardier root. When they start to grow, aerial roots are hardier roots. They can withstand a lot more. So remember that, because sometimes you get your orchid, you change it to bark, and then 3-4 months later, oh my God, it's not doing any good. So I think I'll try water culture or semi-water culture or clay balls or whatever it is, whatever change you make. And that's why patience is at the top of this list, because patience, you have to give the plant time to adjust, to grow. But once they do, and this isn't just a fluky plan. This is a proven plan. It works. It's patience. It's easy. You can do it in your house. Now, some people are lucky. They have a grow room and they can have all kinds of orchids. But I am speaking to people like me that want to live with their orchids. Do you know, as they're doing what they do and you're breathing, you're sharing, and it's a life force you're giving each other. So that's important. Light is very important for this coming growth season. We always feed more nitrogen that time, but we want lots of light, and that's not hot sun directly on your plant. That means light. So as much light as it can take all summer. Mine go out in the solarium and it's glass cover, but if it gets like, sometimes it does way over 100 or there's forest fires and smoke, I bring them in and they're fine in the window. One year it was so hot and so smoky outside, I had them in all year. And so make sure they're near a window where they're getting lots of light, because that's where they're storing their energy to flower. And I'm always trying to get more and more and more. You don't want to burn them, you don't want that direct sun, but they love the light. And so that's important, because the more nutrition they store in that time, sugars they get from the sun, they store away, and then use them come when you get your blossoms. So light is important, and moisture, humidity is important. In-house, lots of times your average might be 50, and that's fine. You can get by with that. I use cool mist, ionized misters around my orchids, and sometimes a fountain. And it's a good idea if it's too dry. If you mist your pot, and holes in your pot so air can circulate, but if you mist your pot and not the media surface, because you'll be surprised from misting how much water you're going to be giving your plant you don't realize. But if you mist the pot, those roots, they're pretty smart. They know that there's humidity somewhere out there. So what are they going to do? They're going to grow down to it. You're going to get them growing. So mist the outside of the pot, or mist the air far away so it's just the humidity. And also, they create their own environment. So the more plants, even if they're different kind, you have together, it helps create a mini environment for your orchids. And that doesn't mean leaves should be touching. Here they are because I crowd them in, but I like to keep my leaves not touching each other. I like to, we put in a ceiling fan in both areas where I have windows. that made a big difference. They love a little fan. Even if you buy a small fan that you can just set on a table or something like that. It doesn't have to be blowing them like a windstorm, but they do like that air movement. So that's just a kind of quick rundown. And all my orchids, the only orchids, I've got 6 phals that aren't here that either I'm still waiting for a couple spikes because they're later because they were flowering last summer, or there's some that might be struggling. So I have 6 phals and 2 slippers and 2 dendrobiums that are not here. And I do want to show you a couple things, but I have to pick up the camera, so I'm going to give you a close-up of a couple things. And I want to say thank you again. And, oh yes, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I could not sleep because I had this crazy idea in my head about how to grow an orchid a little bit differently. And it's still in bark, okay, but I just, something came to me after I repotted my last road cone. If you saw that video, and I had it in the bathtub, and the aerial roots, they were beautiful, and they were all stuck to the pot. And to get it out the pot, to change the media, I had to take them all off, and I know it bothered it. It's still looking healthy, I can show you, but I know it bothered it. I know somebody said you should cut them off, but maybe I should have, some of them. But anyway, my new idea is going to solve that problem. And they can still have long aerial roots. And I'm going to explain it more when I do it, but I want to show you what we've done. I had one more of those. When I take a traffic cone, I put them in these, but I had one more of these outside and enough snow melted that I found it. And these handles here, they were actually the stakes that go in the ground. You put them over like a mini rose bush or something. And this is my last one because I've got 3 and I'm using all of them now. So I have a different plan. It's really different. So it's going to be soon, and I'll explain it more then. So Jack took the spikes and put them together and put a handle on them so I can take it out of the stand easily. And I painted it. I got a couple little places to touch up, and I can probably show you when I do the little tour after. But this is the stand. This is the stand it sits in, and when I show you, it'll be sitting in it. So, and then this goes here. This is a real sturdy one. It won't fall over very good. Now, you're not even going to be able to guess what I'm going to do, but it's going to be interesting, and I think it's going to work. So we will see. We will see. So thanks, everybody. And I'm going to show you some close-ups of a few things and explain a couple of things. And then we'll say goodbye after that. So, okay. Okay, one video I showed you that I quite often, if I have a plant that's loose in the pot. You know, sometimes you might see on an orchid channel that they say, oh, if you can pick the plant up and it stays in the pot, then it's good. Well, I don't like that idea because I'm just in bark. And if you've just potted it, well, it's going to be a while till it's stable. But you know, I started doing this a while ago, and it's to hold it stable. Because I knew a lady one time, actually she's passed away now, but her name was Edna, and out in the garden, and if you're a gardener outside, she used to always say, put a rock on something and it'll grow, or I'll start a new one. So anyway, this is what made me do this. So, but you know what? I think I've discovered, and I noticed it on the 2 I was doing, it has helped, because this one was very unstable. And right where it was, look at the end on it. It has a nice growing end, and it just, I see more coming in here. So I think that if you have an unstable plant or one you're trying to get to root, because yeah, they do like to be, that's why they send up the aerial roots and they stick onto pots, because they like to be anchored. So anchoring this one way, and you know, you can see in here, this was a beautiful color, but one that just was in bad shape, and all these little roots were ones that I had, because I don't cut them anymore, I just peel all the soggy stuff off them when I took it out the moss. Those are them. But now it is getting new roots. It is getting some. So I think that's a good thing, and something, if you have a weak plant, you might want to try. And so this was this was one of the traffic cones, and I picked these holders. See, the new project I'm doing, it could also sit in something like this, but I just use what I have. In fact, Jack made the stand out of just leftover stuff that he had, the stand. And, oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So, so these are the ones in spike. This was an Asian one. I love the color. I'm waiting for it to open. And so these are the ones in spike that have not opened yet, and they'll be a while. So just show you a close-up. Yeah. Does it make us happy? Yes, it does. Okay. They're all in there, and lots of aerial roots on this. Try one. Very few media. And because those roots are attached, I am just shaking that media out of there. It's been in there 2 or 3 years, so this spring you'll see me doing that. I am not going to disturb them. I'm going to just shake it out of there. So, yeah, it's beautiful. Now I want it to go around, and of course this is the one we just repotted, and it's healthy. Now I went from bark to bark. I used some of the bark that was with the orchid, and so they're not under any stress, and we're going to go around and have a closer look at that. So let's go around, because I brought the other cymbidium in. It has 6 spikes on it. I thought it had 5, but it has 6. Now, this is my orchid garden. So let's go have a look over here. Okay, there are 6 spikes. Now here is the other thing. A lot of people say don't bring them in till they're all in bloom. So my first one I brought in because otherwise the buds drop. But I also heard from important people that no, you can bring them in. So I brought this one in early. I brought it in yesterday. Some of the flowers have opened. So far nothing has dropped. A lot of them have opened. And I have this one that was new, and it was the 6th one, and it was behind the others. So we're just going to see how long that really stays. And you see in here, these are still happy roots. We went from bark to bark. Once you make the change and they are used to it, then it's not that big shock. So thank you for joining me. My window's empty, but I will show you the big one. So all these aerial roots, and it's hard to get the same ones back out. They were stuck to the pot and they were just beautiful. So the leaves are all still firm. But I think it's a shock. So my new plan is going to solve that. It'll never happen again. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.